You have
She
to
was
get this
blind,
right.
but she
I
could
can't
still
do
see
it.
the truth, even when the people closest to her tried to hide it. Emily thought she had found
You
love,
have to get this
family,
right.
and
I can't
friendship
do
in the
it.
heart of Colorado. But behind smiles and sweet words, betrayal was waiting. Her husband, her cousin, even her best friend was secretly plotting to steal everything from her. What they didn't know was that Emily had more strength than they ever imagined. This is the story of how one blind woman uncovered the lies, stood up against the people who tried to destroy her, and found freedom in the middle of the darkest storm. But just when Emily thought things couldn't get any worse, a shocking betrayal would cut deeper than anything she had faced before, and it would change her life forever. Stay with me till the end. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment where you're watching from.
You
There's
have to get
something
this
about
right.
Colorado
I
that
can't
makes
do
you
it.
feel both small and infinite at the same time. The mountains stand tall, covered in snow
You
most
have
of the
to
year,
get this right.
and the
I
air
can't
is
do
thinner
it.
than in most places, almost as if every breath you take is borrowed from the sky. It's a place where the sun shines strong, even in winter, and the evenings drop into silence so deep you can hear your own heartbeat. This is where our story begins. Not in a crowded city, not in a loud neighborhood, but in a large stone house on the edge of Denver, where wealth stood proudly behind tall gates, and where a woman named Emily Walker lived, though many would say she didn't truly live at all. Emily was blind. She had been blind since childhood, a condition no doctor had ever been able to cure. Some people pitied her, others admired her courage, but very few truly understood her life. For Emily, blindness was not her biggest prison. The real prison was loneliness. You see, Emily had grown up in a wealthy family. Her father had been a well-respected businessman, the kind of man who built his empire from the ground up, working hard until fortune became his partner. He adored Emily, and though she could not see his face, she always felt his love. But when he passed away, leaving behind a large inheritance, Emily's life began to change in ways she never expected. By the time she was in her 20s, Emily was married. She had met a man who swept into her world with charm, laughter, and words so sweet they felt like honey. His name was Michael Walker. To everyone else, Michael was the perfect husband. Handsome, polite, and always ready with a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder when they walked together. People in church and in town often whispered about how lucky Emily was to have found such a devoted man, someone who stood by her side despite her blindness. But the truth, the painful truth Emily hid behind her quiet smile, was that Michael's kindness ended the moment their front door closed. When the world was not watching, Michael's voice turned sharp, his hands cold and his heart cruel. He would whisper in her ear, "You can't do anything without me. You'd be lost without me." And though Emily tried to be strong, those words cut her deeper than any knife. She would sit in the living room of their large Colorado home, the smell of pine wood from the fireplace filling the air, and she would wonder if this was truly love, or if she had been fooled. She couldn't see Michael's face, but she could hear the contempt in his tone, feel the impatience in the way he sighed when she asked for help, and sense the darkness in him that the rest of the world never saw. Emily's life might have been bearable if Michael's cruelty was her only burden. But there was more. There was her cousin, Clara, a woman she had once trusted like a sister. Clara had been around since childhood, often visiting the Walker house when Emily's father was still alive. She had a way of making Emily laugh, of making her feel less alone in a world she couldn't see. But as the years went by, Clara's visits became less about love and more about envy. She envied Emily's inheritance, envied the big house, the fine clothes, the comfortable life that Emily had been given. Clara would smile, yes, but behind the smile there was bitterness. And in Michael, she found someone who shared her hunger for wealth. Together, behind Emily's back, they whispered plans. Together, they laughed at her blindness, calling it her weakness. Emily didn't know it yet, not fully, but little by little, she would begin to sense the betrayal growing around her like a storm. For now, Emily tried to find small joys in her days. She loved the sound of birds outside her window, especially in spring when the robins returned. She loved the feel of her fingers gliding across the piano keys, playing melodies her father had once taught her. She loved the memory of her father's voice, steady and kind, telling her, Emily, your blindness doesn't define you. What defines you is the courage to keep living with an open heart. But those memories often clashed with Michael's harshness. He would say things like, "Your father spoiled you. He left you money but no sense. That's why you need me." And Emily, though her heart ached, would stay silent. She was blind, yes, but she was not foolish. Deep down, she knew Michael didn't love her the way she deserved. Yet she feared being alone. Who would she be without him? A blind woman in a big house, isolated from the world. The thought of that emptiness scared her more than Michael's cruelty. Still, there was one person Emily thought she could rely on. Her best friend, Vanessa Miller. Vanessa had been by her side since college. She was bold, outspoken, and often reminded Emily to be braver. Whenever Michael's cruelty cut too deep, Emily would call Vanessa, and her friend's voice would lift her up. "You're stronger than you think, Emily," Vanessa would say. "Don't let him crush you." Emily believed her. She clung to those words like a lifeline. But what Emily didn't know yet was that Vanessa, too, had her secrets. Secrets that would wound Emily more deeply than she ever imagined. Life inside the Walker home moved on with a strange rhythm. Days filled with silence, moments of kindness from Michael that always turned into manipulation, and occasional visits from Clara, who always found a way to remind Emily how lucky she was. Sometimes, Emily would sit quietly while Michael and Clara chatted in the kitchen. Their voices dropped low, almost to whispers, but Emily's hearing was sharp. She would catch fragments of their conversations, words like papers, inheritance, and soon. Her heart would beat faster. She would ask, "What are you two talking about?" And Michael would laugh. "Oh, sweetheart, you're imagining things. Clara and I are just talking about family matters." But the way he said it, with that edge of mockery, made Emily feel like a child, as if her blindness made her unworthy of the truth. At night, when Michael thought she was asleep, Emily would lie awake in their large bedroom, her hands gripping the edge of the blanket, her ears straining to catch every sound. Sometimes she heard Michael on the phone, speaking softly, too softly. Sometimes she heard Clara's laughter drifting from the patio when she stayed too late. And though Emily couldn't see it, she began to feel it. The walls of her life were closing in. Her inheritance, her father's legacy, the very thing she had trusted would keep her safe, was becoming the chain others wanted to steal. But in those early days, Emily still held on to hope. She believed that perhaps she was imagining too much, that her fears were bigger than reality. She told herself, "Michael may be cruel, but surely he wouldn't destroy me. Clara may be envious, but surely she wouldn't betray me. Vanessa may be bold, but surely she wouldn't abandon me." It is often in the quiet before the storm that the heart refuses to believe the worst. And Emily's heart, fragile yet still beating with hope, was not ready for the betrayal that was coming. As the Colorado sky stretched wide above her, as the seasons shifted from snow to spring, Emily had no idea that the people she trusted most were preparing to take everything from her. She couldn't see the danger, not with her eyes, but deep down, her soul had already begun to sense it. And this was only the beginning. Michael was changing, or perhaps it was that his true nature was now fully showing. He no longer bothered to pretend behind closed doors. In the mornings, when Emily tried to make him coffee, he would snap at her. "Don't bother. You'll spill it all over the counter again." If she offered to set the table, he would sigh loudly. "You can't even see what you're doing. Just sit down and stay out of the way." And when she pressed him for affection, asking for the warmth he once gave so freely, he would laugh coldly. "Emily, you should be grateful anyone even stays with you. Who else would take care of a blind woman?" Those words hit harder than a slap. She would go to the bathroom afterward, gripping the edges of the sink, whispering to herself, "Don't cry, Emily. Don't let him see you break." But the tears came anyway, sliding down her face in the silence of the tiled room. Clara, her cousin, only made things worse. She came over more often now, carrying that fake sweetness in her voice that barely hid her bitterness. She would hug Emily tightly in front of Michael, saying, "You're so lucky, Em. You have this big house, a husband who adores you, money that makes life easier. Some of us aren't so fortunate." But when Emily sat with her later, quietly sipping tea, Clara's tone would shift. "You know, Emily," she would say softly, "maybe it's too much for you. Managing all this money, handling the business side of things. Maybe it would be better if you trusted Michael to take care of it. He knows what he's doing." Emily's heart would pound at those words. Better if I trusted Michael. Why did Clara always insist on that? Why did she always remind Emily of her blindness, as if her lack of sight made her incapable of managing her own life? Still, Emily tried to brush it off. She wanted to believe Clara was simply concerned. She wanted to believe Michael was harsh because he was stressed, not because he hated her. But little by little, the unease inside her grew. One evening, as spring turned the air warmer and the snow began melting from the mountains, Emily overheard something that chilled her to the bone. She had come downstairs quietly, her hand brushing the wooden railing as she moved, when she heard Michael's voice in the kitchen. He was speaking on the phone. "Yes, I'll handle it," he said sharply. "She won't suspect a thing. She's too blind to see what's going on." Emily froze. Her hand gripped the railing so tightly her knuckles hurt. She listened harder. "Clara's on board," Michael continued. "We just need the paperwork signed and the money will transfer. Once that's done, she won't have a dime left. We'll be free." Emily's stomach twisted. She felt like the floor was crumbling beneath her feet. She backed away, careful not to make a sound, and returned to the living room, her mind spinning. The money. They're after my inheritance. That night she barely slept. She lay awake, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths, as Michael slipped into bed beside her. He smelled of cologne and wine, and when he kissed her forehead, she almost shuddered. Now she knew the truth. Every touch, every word, every moment had been part of a performance. Still, a part of her doubted. Maybe she had misheard. Maybe he meant something else. Maybe her mind was playing tricks on her. But then Clara came over the next day, and her words confirmed the worst. "Emily," Clara said casually, "Michael tells me you've been worried about the inheritance. Honestly, sweetheart, it's too much stress for you. Why don't you let him manage it? You trust him, don't you?" Emily smiled faintly, hiding the storm inside her chest. "Yes," she whispered. "I trust him." But her heart screamed, "No, I don't." And then there was Vanessa. Sweet, bold, reliable Vanessa, or so Emily thought. At first, Vanessa seemed like the only person she could turn to. Emily told her about Michael's cruelty, about Clara's strange insistence on money. Vanessa would sigh over the phone. I warned you about that man. He's not good for you. You need to be careful." Those words comforted Emily. But what she didn't know was that Vanessa, too, had her eyes on the inheritance. Michael had charmed her, too, whispering promises in her ear. Promises of wealth, of power, of freedom. And though Vanessa pretended to be Emily's protector, she was already plotting against her. It started with small things. Vanessa encouraging Emily to rely more on Michael. "He's your husband," she would say. "He should take care of the finances." And then, slowly, Vanessa began visiting less often, answering Emily's calls less quickly. When she did come by, Emily noticed a strange tension between Vanessa and Michael, a silence filled with things unsaid. She couldn't see their stolen glances, but she could feel them. She could sense the way the air shifted when the two of them stood too close together. Her world, once filled with at least a few people she trusted, now felt like a trap. A house with walls closing in, where every person she loved was sharpening a knife behind her back. The cruelest part of betrayal is not the act itself. It's the disbelief. Emily kept asking herself, could it be true? Could Michael, Clara, and Vanessa really want to destroy me? Or am I imagining everything because I'm scared and blind? She wanted to cling to hope, but hope was slipping through her fingers. The turning point came one afternoon when Michael placed a stack of papers in front of her. "Emily," he said, his voice unusually gentle, "these are just some routine documents. Nothing complicated. Just some financial adjustments to make sure your inheritance is managed properly. All you have to do is sign here. Emily reached out, her fingers brushing the edge of the papers. They felt cold, lifeless, dangerous. Her hand trembled. "What are they for?" she asked quietly. Michael chuckled. "Sweetheart, don't worry about the details. That's why you have me. To sign. It'll make things easier." She swallowed hard. "I'd rather wait until my lawyer looks at them." His voice hardened instantly. "You don't need a lawyer. You have me. Don't you trust me?" Her chest tightened. She wanted to scream, "No, I don't trust you. I don't trust any of you." But instead she whispered, "I'll think about it." Michael slammed the table with his hand, making her jump. "You're being ungrateful. I'm the only one keeping your life together, Emily. Without me, you'd have nothing." His words echoed through the house, bouncing off the walls, searing themselves into her heart. And in that moment, Emily knew the truth. This was no longer just about cruelty. This was about survival. Michael and Clara, and maybe even Vanessa, were coming for her. For her money, for her freedom, for everything her father had left behind. Her blindness was not the weakness they believed. She could sense things. She could feel the danger. And she knew, deep down, that a day was coming when she would have to fight back. For now, though, she stayed silent. She played the role of the obedient wife, the trusting cousin, the loyal friend. But inside her something was changing. The fear that once controlled her was slowly hardening into strength. The storm had not yet broken, but it was near. The clouds were darker now, the air heavy with betrayal. And Emily, blind though she was, could see it clearer than ever. The house in Denver that once felt like a shelter now felt like a cage. Each day brought new pressure, and Emily Walker could feel the walls pressing closer around her. Michael's voice, once sweet and playful when they first met, had become sharper than the mountain winds outside. He no longer cared to hide his cruelty. "Emily, you're useless," he said one morning, his voice dripping with contempt as she carefully set a plate of breakfast on the table. "You can't even pour a glass of juice without spilling it. How do you think you're supposed to handle millions of dollars?" Emily flinched, but she didn't reply. She kept her hands folded tightly in her lap, holding back the tears that threatened to fall. She had learned something. Michael wanted her tears. He wanted her to break. And if she gave him that satisfaction, it only fed his power. But the pressure was not only in his words. Clara, her cousin, had become almost a permanent presence in the house. She came often, claiming she was there to help, but Emily knew better. Clara's perfume lingered in the hallways, her laughter echoed in the kitchen, and her words always circled back to the same thing: the inheritance. Clara would say, her voice warm and falsely affectionate. "You've been carrying this responsibility for too long. Think about it. You're blind, you shouldn't have to worry about money. Let Michael handle it. He loves you. He wants the best for you." The word blind always fell from Clara's mouth like a dagger. Emily felt it every time. Blind. Weak. Incompetent. That was what Clara wanted her to believe. And then there was Vanessa. For years, Vanessa had been the one person Emily thought she could trust above anyone else. But lately, Vanessa's voice on the phone carried a strange distance. She was harder to reach, her visits shorter, her laughter forced. When Emily finally confronted her one evening, sitting together on the porch as the sun dipped behind the Rockies, Vanessa sighed. I just think you're overreacting," Vanessa said. "Michael's your husband. He's supposed to take care of these things. Stop being so suspicious." Emily turned her blind eyes toward the sound of her friend's voice. "You've always told me to stand up for myself," she whispered. "Now you're telling me to hand everything over to him?" There was a pause. Emily couldn't see the look on Vanessa's face, but she could feel the shift in the air, the tension in her silence. Finally, Vanessa forced a laugh. "I'm just saying it might be easier. You trust me, right?" Emily nodded faintly, but her chest tightened. Something was wrong. Something in Vanessa's tone told her that the betrayal she feared was already here. The pressure built day by day. Michael began leaving documents on the table, pushing them toward her with a pen. Just sign, Emily. It's nothing complicated. Just adjustments. Stop making everything so difficult. Emily's hands trembled as she felt the edges of the papers. She wanted to rip them apart, to scream at him, to demand the truth. But fear held her back. Fear of what would happen if she refused outright. Fear of what Michael was capable of. One night, after yet another argument, Emily sat alone in the dark of the living room. Her fingers tracing the smooth wood of the piano her father had given her years ago. She pressed a few keys softly, the notes echoing in the silence. And for a moment she heard her father's voice again in her memory. Emily, you're stronger than you think. Even in the dark, you will find your way. She clung to those words. They became a thread of light in her suffocating darkness. But the very next day, the storm came closer. Michael and Clara cornered her in the kitchen. Emily, Michael said firmly. Enough stalling. You need to sign the papers. I told you, Emily said softly. I want my lawyer to look at them. Clara's voice turned sharp. Don't you trust your own husband? Don't you trust family? Stop being paranoid. You're acting like a child. Emily's chest rose and fell quickly. She clutched the edge of the counter to steady herself. It's not paranoia. It's my right. This is my father's money, his legacy. Michael's voice thundered then, shaking the room. Your father is dead. And if he could see you now, he'd know you can't handle it. You need me, Emily. Without me, you're nothing. The words hit her like a physical blow. Her knees went weak. For a moment she thought she might fall. And then, as if on cue, the phone rang. Michael picked it up. Emily listened carefully as his tone softened. Yes, he said. We're almost there. Don't worry. She'll sign. She doesn't have a choice. Emily's breath caught. She knew the voice on the other end. It was Vanessa. Her hands shook as she realized the depth of the betrayal. Her husband, her cousin, and her best friend, the three people she should have been able to trust, were all working together against her. That night, lying awake in her bed, Emily made a decision. She could not let them win. She would not let her father's legacy be stolen. She might be blind, but she was not powerless. The storm was coming, and Emily would be ready. The days that followed felt like walking on thin ice, each step threatening to break beneath Emily's feet. Michael's anger grew sharper, Clara's nagging more relentless, and Vanessa's silence more suspicious. The air in the house grew heavy, as if the walls themselves knew what was about to happen. It was on a cold morning in early April when everything began to unravel. Michael entered the living room where Emily sat quietly with her hands folded in her lap. His footsteps were heavy, his tone brisk. Emily, he said, we're going to the bank today. Her heart jumped. The bank? Why? To take care of those documents. You've stalled long enough. Her throat tightened. She tried to steady her voice. I told you, Michael. I want my lawyer. His hand slammed against the table, making her flinch. Enough. You don't need a lawyer. You have me. Clara will come with us. It'll be done today. Emily's chest rose and fell in quick, shallow breaths. She knew then that there would be no more delays. Whatever they were planning, today was the day they meant to finish it. The car ride to the bank was silent except for the sound of the engine and Clara's occasional fake laughter. Emily sat in the back seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She listened closely. Michael's breathing was heavy, controlled, like a man holding in impatience. Clara's voice was smooth, almost rehearsed. It'll all be over soon, Em, Clara said sweetly. You'll feel so much better once you let Michael handle things. Emily turned her face toward the window, though she could not see the world rushing past. In her heart she whispered a prayer. God, give me courage. Show me what to do. The bank smelled of polished wood and faint coffee. Michael guided her firmly by the arm, his grip too tight to be affectionate. Clara walked just behind them, her heels clicking against the marble floor. At the desk, a cashier greeted them politely. Good morning. How can I help you? Michael spoke quickly, his voice smooth. My wife is here to authorize a transfer of funds. Just routine paperwork. Emily's heart pounded. She felt the pen being pressed into her hand. The papers slid under her fingers. Her mind screamed, don't sign. Don't give them what they want. Her father's voice came back to her then, clear as day. Even in the dark, you will find your way. Emily took a shaky breath. She held the pen, but instead of signing, she moved her hand slowly, pretending to hesitate. Then, with a trembling hand, she wrote a few words at the bottom corner of the page where no one was watching. She wrote, "Help me. He's forcing me. I'm blind." She pushed the paper back toward the cashier. The woman's voice caught for just a moment as she looked down, but she quickly covered it with professionalism. "Of course, Mrs. Walker. I'll just have this reviewed." Michael smiled tightly. "Good. We don't have all day." The cashier excused herself and disappeared into the back office. Emily's hands were clammy. She didn't know if the message would work, or if the cashier would even believe her. She only knew that it was her only chance. Minutes later, footsteps echoed in the hall. Emily recognized the voice instantly. Her lawyer, Mark Stevens, the man her father had trusted for decades. "Emily," he said gently, coming to her side. "I got your message." Michael's voice turned sharp. "What's he doing here? This is a private matter." Mark's tone hardened. "Not anymore." Emily reached out for help. "And now I'm here to make sure she's protected." Emily's heart swelled with relief. She gripped Mark's hand, whispering, "Thank you." Michael's mask began to crack. His voice rose. "This is nonsense. She's confused. She doesn't know what she's signing." But Mark cut him off. "I've seen the documents. They would transfer Emily's entire inheritance into your name, Michael. You and Clara planned this together." There was a gasp, from Clara, from the cashier, even from others in the bank who had begun to watch. Clara's voice trembled. "That's not true." Mark pulled out a folder. "I have the emails, calls, the bank records. Emily isn't the one who's blind here. It's all of you who thought she'd never notice." Vanessa appeared then, as if summoned by guilt or greed. She walked into the bank, her heels clicking, her smile smug. "Well," she said, "looks like the little secret's out." Emily's chest tightened. "Vanessa," her voice cracked. "You too." Vanessa smirked. "Come on, Did you really think I'd sit back while you drowned in money you couldn't even use properly? You were never meant to keep it all. We just helped speed things up." The betrayal cut deeper than any of Michael's cruel words ever had. Her best friend. The one she had trusted most. Michael's temper exploded then. "You stupid woman," he shouted, turning on Emily. "You think you've won because your lawyer showed up? You're blind, Emily. You'll always be blind. Without me, you're nothing." But Emily stood taller than she had in years. She lifted her chin, her voice steady though her hands trembled. "You're wrong, Michael. I may be blind, but I'm not helpless. And I'm not yours to control." The bank erupted in chaos after that. Security was called. Police arrived soon after, pulling Michael and Clara aside as Mark handed over the evidence. Vanessa tried to slip away, but even her name was written in the records Mark carried. Emily sat quietly as the storm swirled around her. Her heart pounded, but there was a strange calm inside her too. For the first time she had stood up against them. For the first time she had chosen courage over fear. As Michael shouted from across the room, his voice dripping with hatred, Emily whispered to herself, "You can't hurt me anymore." It was the beginning of her freedom. The ride home from the bank that day was different from any other ride Emily had taken before. This time, she was not being dragged around by Michael's iron grip or weighed down by Clara's false sweetness. Instead, she sat in the back of Mark's car, her hands resting quietly in her lap, her heart still pounding from the storm she had just endured. For the first time in years, she felt the air on her face without fear. It was sharp and cool, the kind of Colorado spring air that carried both the chill of winter and the promise of summer. She let it wash over her as if it were a blessing. Michael, Clara, and Vanessa were taken into custody that very afternoon. The evidence Mark carried was undeniable. Emails, voice recordings, even financial drafts they had tried to keep hidden. Their schemes, which they had thought so clever, crumbled like sand in the tide. Emily sat quietly in Mark's office later that evening as he explained it all to her. His voice was calm, steady, and full of reassurance. "They'll face trial," he said. "Michael most of all. Fraud, coercion, abuse. Clara and Vanessa will be investigated too. I can't promise you it'll be quick, but justice will come. What matters now is that you're safe." The word felt almost foreign to Emily, like something she had read about but never experienced. She let it roll over her tongue silently. She wondered how long it would take for her heart to believe it. The nights that followed were strange. The house felt different without Michael's voice booming through the halls, without Clara's footsteps echoing sharply on the floors, without Vanessa's sudden unannounced visits. The silence was heavy, but it was a peaceful silence. For once, the walls of the house felt like they belonged to her again. Still, there were moments when doubt crept in. Lying in bed at night, Emily sometimes heard Michael's voice in her head, cruel and mocking. "You're blind. You're nothing without me." But then she remembered the bank, the feel of the pen in her hand, the courage it took to write that note, the sound of her own voice standing tall against him. Those memories became her anchor. Weeks passed. News of the scandal spread through Denver. Headlines painted Michael not as the devoted husband he had pretended to be, but as the manipulative man who had tried to steal from his blind wife. Clara was branded a scheming cousin, Vanessa a false friend. Their reputations collapsed faster than Emily could have imagined. One afternoon Linda came to visit. Her voice was softer than Emily remembered, filled with both regret and warmth. "I'm sorry," Linda said as she sat beside her sister on the porch. "I should have been there sooner. I thought you wanted distance. I thought Michael was taking care of you." Emily reached for her sister's hand, holding it gently. "You believed the mask he wore. So did I. What matters is that you're here now." Tears filled Linda's eyes. "You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for." Emily smiled faintly. "I didn't feel strong. But maybe strength isn't about feeling it. Maybe it's just about choosing to keep going, even when you're afraid." With Linda's support and Mark's steady guidance, Emily began to rebuild her life. She made a decision that surprised even herself. She would use her inheritance not for lavish living, but to create something her father would have been proud of. The Carter Foundation for the Blind was reborn, this time in Colorado. Emily poured her energy into it. Programs for education, support for families, opportunities for independence. She wanted others like her to know that blindness was not an end, but another way of seeing the world. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Emily stood with Linda and Mark by her side. She spoke into the microphone, her voice steady and filled with quiet conviction. "My father once told me," she said, "that even in the dark I would find my way. For a long time I thought I was lost. I thought the darkness had swallowed me. But I've learned something. Darkness does not mean defeat. Even in shadows we can find courage. Even in betrayal we can find truth. And even when we are broken we can be rebuilt." The crowd erupted in applause. Emily smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. She could not see their faces, but she felt their belief, their hope, their connection. Later that night, sitting alone in her home, Emily lit a single candle. The flame flickered, tiny but steady. She could not see it, but she felt its presence, its warmth. She whispered to herself, "You can't hurt me anymore." The words were not just for Michael, Clara, or Vanessa. They were for every fear that had tried to chain her. They were for every doubt, every cruel voice that lingered in her memory. Emily Carter, blind, betrayed but unbroken, had found her way in the dark. And this time she was free.